And good morning, and welcome to the Old School podcast on modern education system in the United States and the problems therein and possible solutions as a result. My name is Ross Miller. I'm with Dr. Stephen Bourgeois, and we can be found now on a growing number of platforms that you might listen to your various podcasts. And so, good morning, Dr. Bourgeois.
Good morning, Mr. Miller.
How's it going?
I'm fine. To me, mind you, I'm not teaching, so summer is not summer, it's just work, and it's a chance to make more money, actually. That's what I do. But you say
I imagine the teachers take it in the same vein, don't you think?
I don't know. You're downright giddy. You've been kind of grumpy for the last 9 months, and there's a little bit of spring in your step, it looks like.
It's because I'm about to go on vacation, that's why.
Okay, well, we talked about vacation and how some teachers start rather early, before the students have been released.
Much like the students, there are some teachers that begin quite early. One of the things I was thinking that we could talk about of a slightly provocative nature, we could mention, given the current and normal problems that teachers face, what is the appropriate type of alcohol to soothe those issues after the workday is done?
So you're saying that in jest, you're not thinking that we're going to spend an hour talking about the relative benefits of rum or tequila or...
Only one of us is capable of extending a conversation about alcohol for an hour, and I'm not that person, but...
well, it would be a one-sided. I would be pretty much educating you on how not to make that funny face you do when you have a glass of something.
The only thing I know is that according to the great philosopher Buffett, that rum is for all your good vices. That's all I know. And,
rum is for all your good vices.
Yeah. Son of a sailor.
Oh my goodness. Why don't we
You
not
don't like
do
Jimmy
that?
Buffett, do you?
No, I love Jimmy Buffett, but I don't want to spend an hour talking about something where we'll lose listeners one after the other. Why don't you pick another task for us today here, Miller?
Well, I think one of the things, and it's rather apropos that we should talk about it today, has to do with the summer break and how the summer break in many ways shapes the job, but also shapes the perception of the job and the kind of difference between what people think teachers do and what a lot of good, conscientious teachers actually do.
Okay. And which of those categories do you fall?
Well, I have always said that because here's the thing. Every time you talk to people about being a teacher, there are two things that are going to come out of their mouth at some point. One, wow, I really respect what you do. Not that people don't respect what I do, but, I don't know if they do or not. It just doesn't matter. When you look at the list of jobs that are listed under the most respected jobs, teaching comes pretty low on the list, So maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. The second thing, in a much more derisive sort of way, they bring up the summer break as if whatever you can say about August through May, it gets washed away by the seemingly inactivity of June and July in the beginning of August. And I think a lot of people kind of see it as, I don't know, one big goof off period. I guess to be honest, I don't know what they think about it. I can only go by their comments, and sometimes the comments are not generous.
Well, so the fact that teachers have a longer vacation, they take that as a personal affront. Don't know what to do with that information.
Well, a combination of the summer plus spring break, there's a fall break, there's 2 weeks plus than Christmas. There's a lot of things about how the calendar is shaped that is then turned around and used to assess the profession. And I'm not sure that's the best way of going about it,
Well, so back to the summer, and we've discussed how hard teaching is, and if
Yes.
you do it right, you should be pretty well spent by the time you get to June.
Yes. Yeah, and I think there's the old Army commercial. We'll joke that the Army came up with this, and whether that's true or not, but they say they do more before 9 a.m. than most people do all day. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. I was never in the Army. I can't say for sure. But, it is said that, the teachers do a hell of a lot of work over the course of a year, over the course of the 9 months, 10 months that they work, you know. And so certainly if any profession is due a little siesta, a little time off, a little break, a little pause, as the Germans say, to kind of reflect, to re-energize yourself for the coming year, I think it should be teaching. But it is a means by which to denigrate the profession. Now, what did you typically do over the summers when you taught?
There's a lot of different. I mean, I taught at a lot of different schools, but I think my best example is um, when I was teaching relatively early in my career. I was at a school for 6 years, and we've discussed the end of school and how I hated the checkout period for
Right.
teachers, where the building was empty and they started announcing, "Here, Bourgeois, please get out of the building. We need your grades right now." And that stressed me out. It still does. I get a little twitchy talking about that. But what I did in my wisdom was have my car packed. And this was new for me because it was hard for me to get out of school.
Right.
But once I had checked out and signed out, and they slammed the door behind me, I would get into my car. It was an Oldsmobile, a Chiva. It was cool for about 5 minutes. And then they stopped making them. But I would get into that car and drive. So I never went back to my apartment. I went from school and driving to the West Coast. I grew up in Oregon, and so I wanted to go see my parents. And it took about 3 days to get there, 3 nights typically, maybe. But I remember that trip, just leaving around 3 o'clock or 2 or whatever. I'm trying to get my way to East Texas as far as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt a lot of stress for about a day and a half, where I was worried about, should I have failed that kid? Did I turn this in? Am I going to get called back? On that speaker. So the stress was real. And about the time I got past Denver and started heading up, towards Wyoming, it was getting better. And then when you make that left turn west, suddenly you forget about it. So that there is a period of dealing with it, because the stress is real and it's cumulative and it's constant. As a teacher, you never take a deep breath because there's always something to worry about. So I remember that part. I mean, I want to get into the rest of the summer. Maybe you can talk about what you do, but that early phase was always tough for me to let it go.
And apparently, if I remember my American geography correctly, about the time you started to lose the stress is when perhaps you remembered your John Muir. The mountains are calling. You start to see the mountains in the distance, and you know to yourself, in the grand scheme of things, this is all pretty much small stuff.
Yeah, well said, Miller. I got a little tear in my eye there. But as you go through Wyoming, there's a point where you feel like you're on top of everything, and it's just this expanse, and it's a beautiful thing. And you're driving through fields early in the morning, and what could be more opposite than walking into a school building and all that commotion, suddenly. So I think it's a good transition. But a lot of teachers transition to their kids being home, their own kids.
Mm.
And so it's a little bit different, than being free to explore the country.
Well, I will admit that over the last 6 years, my summers have been a little less footloose and fancy free as they were the previous 19 years. But I think there's something about, because typically after school is over, there's kind of a release. And with that release, you usually get sick. I used to get sick all the time right after school was over.
Remember,
because you've been running on fumes basically for the last couple of months. But you've not been able to be in a position where you could throttle back, as it were. But now that the school year is over, you're able to throttle back a little bit. And then all of a sudden your immune system just goes haywire. And then pretty soon you're sick, but then after that, then there is this kind of, well, you got about a week or so where you're just not doing crap. You're sitting there laying on a couch, doing God knows what, just watching your stories. I don't know what you do in the summer, but then after that, you go on your first kind of vacation. And then after that, my mindset changes. a little bit, and where my mindset begins to start to focus on, well, it becomes the reflection of the school year. Because if you are a conscientious teacher, then there should be some reflection. Now, certainly you're going to do reflection all throughout the school year, but what you do in the summer is you kind of take the entire year in its entirety, by considering what you could have done better, how you could have done things differently. And so for me, part of that time over the summer is spent doing that and then making plans and then trying to figure out how to do things differently. So I think it's only in a couple of weeks that you have what could be described as kind of like a vacation. And then it's kind of like a very mild form of work where you're still technically on vacation. In this case, I have a kid I have to take care of. But then the other time is spent starting to put things together for the next year, So for example, this year, this next coming year, I'm about to teach a subject I have not taught in a while. And so part of my responsibility is going to be, trying to get myself up to speed on this particular topic. And so it's quite different from when I used to teach it. There's been a lot of changes to the curriculum. And so therefore, it's going to require me to do some work to get myself up to speed so that on the first day of school, I'm ready to rock and roll and there's no problem. I think the other aspect of this is not just kind of from a job point of view, but I think part of this, at least for me, is it's also a mental step away. Because I think we talked about this before. I think in general, despite the rather jovial, gregarious nature you might find me to have on this podcast, I'm a fairly introverted person. And so when I teach, it takes a lot out of me, mentally, physically, what have you, because over the course of a day, I am constantly not in my natural state. My natural state is in quiet, jazz playing or something like that. And while I may get that from time to time, I'm teaching, I'm on, as it were. And that takes a lot out of you. And so part of it is trying to get yourself ready for the next school year. But part of you is also trying to kind of regroup a little bit mentally to prepare yourself to then go back out on that stage come August.
And so during that time, your vocal cords rest. And once you go back to teaching, you have a sore throat for about 3 weeks.
Until the first couple of weeks. Yeah.
Well, there are teachers that, do the unheard of, and they actually teach in the summer. And it's more because I hate to say it, but teachers don't earn a lot of money, and they have an opportunity sometimes to earn some money over the summer. I've heard tell that this current year, the price for a summer school teacher is a little bit higher. They're having to ante up a little bit more. So some teachers are biting and saying, okay, everybody has their price,
Sure.
And you offer enough, you get a lineup of volunteers and people are fighting each other for those slots. But some teachers do that. I don't think I've ever taught summer school. I can't recall. It seems like I do other work, but I have side hustles and I do music and things like that. But have you ever even been tempted to teach summer school?
Never in my life have I been tempted. Has it occurred to me? I mean, from whether you're talking about, teaching summer school to reading for an AP exam or something like that. Teaching, I can't do it, because I need that step away. I need that mental kind of break, as it were, because it just, like I said, it takes a lot out of me. Now, as far as like doing like AP read or something like that, my fifth circle of hell is being stuck inside of some sort of bland, boring, generic hotel conference room, reading one essay after another every single day for 5 days or 6 days or what have you. Just kill me. It would kill me. And so I can't do it. And yeah, I know it's nice money, but I've accepted that I'm okay with a little less money. And if that means that I'm not doing the AP read, or that means I'm not doing summer school, I'm okay with that decision. I just can't do that. But what I do choose to do is to seek out opportunities to enrich myself in different ways. Now, enriching myself could mean taking the family on a vacation to a place that I find culturally, historically, or otherwise interesting. It could be taking students to Germany, as you and I have done over the course of the last 10 years or so. It could mean being a part of some sort of workshop or something like that, where I get to learn something different or learn something new or learn something in a different way. But the notion of working in a traditional sense, the way I do from August to May, no, that has never occurred to me.
Well, you probably are making a wise decision, because you would be much grumpier, for all of us, including your students, if you didn't have that break. So I think that's a good thing. You mentioned summer enrichment, for teachers. Some of it is required. I mean, we both teach AP. I mean, I taught AP German for years, and you've taught a variety of AP courses. And there are requirements to attend institutes, summer institutes. They usually last a week, typically at a local university, but sometimes it becomes a travel option where you go to some interesting place and spend a week with other teachers in your field. I've found that breaks the spell a little bit, and not necessarily in a good way, but it's so amazing how quickly you get back into the mindset of teaching when you're surrounded by teachers in your field and you talk shop. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. I mean, you've been at those, and the knowledge is important, and often it's way more focused than any professional development you get at school, because this is what we dream of, in your area. But at the same time, the timing in June or whatever it is, it interrupts that repose, I would say.
It does. And it also, while on one hand, it can lead to the enrichment that you seek, the idea of being amongst shared personalities and traits and what have you, the things that you're drawn to, shared interests. You also have the other side of what happens when you hang out with teachers somewhat, and it doesn't take long before the bitching starts. You get a bunch of people, you get a bunch of teachers together, and it doesn't take long before they're kvetching about one thing or another. And then you realize why you don't hang out with teachers, and then you just again, you die 1,000 deaths, and they're just dealing with this. And so sometimes, when I'm in those kind of environments, I certainly spend my time talking with folks, discussing things or what have you. But I also spend a lot of time still alone, go to lunch by myself or do whatever by myself. And so those are the risk you run when you do in that kind of thing. And you're right. You find yourself quickly back in the dynamics of a school setting, and, the good side of it is that you're doing training that, as you mentioned, is certainly more worthwhile than the average stuff you might come across in your school-based training. But you're also taking yourself back into the fray, as it were.
Well, that fray starts relatively early. I mean, it does sneak up on you. I think the idea of June, July, and August is gone. The August date is getting earlier and earlier, so it's about 2 months and change. And so that's always out there. And at some point, it gets in your mind, like, oh, the summer's not eternal; it's not an endless summer, and you get a little stress starting to picture going back. We've already talked about that summer professional development, and how I want to just keep driving or drive right to the district office and resign as soon as I hate it. But something I didn't hate was the week before that, where the teachers would start to straggle in one by one, sometimes in twos or threes, but they would go into their room because they know that they're going to be stuck in these silly meetings for a whole week, and they're not going to get to put things up on their board or get organized or get their materials. And so I kind of liked that, having a little bit of time to actually make a transition, because going from summer to a faculty meeting is probably not smart. That's a little bit harsh. That
It's soul crushing is what it is.
Soul crushing. Always a little stronger than what I say here, Miller.
Well, it's because you have a finer point of nuance.
Well, so have you ever been in a school building during maybe, let's say, the late summer?
I have been, as department chair, I will sometimes go about a week early and start kind of putting things together. Not so much to get ahead of the game, but to be made available to colleagues if they need anything. That's just one less thing I have to deal with as the rest of the staff starts to come in a week later. And so um, part of it is about getting stuff done, stuff that you may or may not have time to do, but part of it is also to make yourself available to other folks if they need it. So yes, I mean it's I kind of like it, because it represents my favorite times of being at school, and that's when no one else is really there, because it really there's a monastic quality being surrounded by books and not people. And so as you kind of set yourself up and create your environment once more in the classroom, then it does kind of allow you to ruminate over the coming year. It allows you to kind of fill in on that and kind of merge with that vibe that's in the classroom. I do like it. Now, I wonder though, to what degree do you think that the summer and the summer months serve as a source of criticism or denigration by others and the profession? Do you think that it's hurtful? Do you think it would be different if we had, what the Germans do to kind of the year-round model, or does it really matter?
I think the latter. I mean, it doesn't matter because the year-round model, you still get the same amount of time off.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, the idea, I don't know what the idea was, but that a teacher could go back and go to school or do some substantial travel or something. So it made sense, and the summers used to be actually 3 months.
Right.
So as it's shortened, think about a vice principal or a principal or anyone with administrator after their name. They don't have that. They have maybe half or even much less. I mean, they're working for a living all the time.
Usually only a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, maybe tops.
Yeah, and the difference in salary between a vice principal and a teacher isn't that much, and you're sacrificing vacation and a lot of other things to be able to wear that suit and have a clipboard.
You're saying the sacrifice is not commensurate with the pay raise?
I don't think so. I mean, you're also trying to pass through that position. I don't think any vice principal says, I want to be a vice principal for life. They want the big office.
Right.
And then they want to get out of that office to the district. But it is a little bit different because if you do come in the summer, you're apt to run into a principal or vice principal because they are working and they have a lot to do during that time, whereas the teachers don't. So I mean, maybe to answer your question, that interaction between, this is when the vice principals start to feel like administrators. So they're they're working all summer and teachers come in. Mm-hmm. It's a whole different type of a career at that point.
But I wonder, I've kind of alluded to it earlier when I said that, the best of teachers will spend part of their summer reflecting and thinking about how to do things differently the following year. I'm wondering, with no expectation that you might know or should know or could know, but what do you think is the difference between how, say, a German teacher spends their vacation time outside of school, particularly the summer break, as opposed to what American teachers tend to do? Is it comparable? Is it the same? Are they taking the break more seriously for some reason? What do you think?
I think they have a different attitude towards it. The teachers I know take real vacations, dramatic ones. I mean, they'll go, they'll go to, I don't know, Yugoslavia or someplace that has a EIA at the end. They'll go to Greece. They will travel. I mean, Europe, you can get places inexpensively. It's all pretty compact.
Right.
But what they don't do is stay home. That wouldn't enter into their thinking. Let's have a staycation. They'll say, what is a staycation? I don't understand. They wouldn't understand the word, but also the idea. You need to, so in their case, they get away very quickly and go, I mean, don't you remember, some of our friends, I mean, they talk about these pretty exciting vacations and So our little road trips, quite different, than there, but they get the heck away, is my impression.
Remember our favorite communist friend. Yeah, they've done a couple of trips to Cuba. Remember, if you recall. I mean, it's so we're talking about far-flung destinations. We're not talking about. And when I call her a communist, I mean it with the deepest amount of love and respect and affection. So, but yes, I mean they do get out of town,
Yeah.
And it kind of is commiserate with the time that a lot of Europeans do leave. August is typically the month where a lot of people take off, and so it's a continental kind of movement out of the continent.
Well, it goes into their planning. I mean, here we are talking about Germany again, but they rotate their vacation by state. They have the federal states, and so early June or whatever, maybe in Bavaria and another couple of states, and then they shift it. Otherwise, they would have traffic jam that would never move.
Right.
I mean, on their news reports, they measure traffic jams in kilometers. They really do.
Yes.
And so I think that the travel, is really important to them. Vacation, I think it's the same thing. Maybe the word means the same thing. We need to travel, but the same for teachers and really for students and everybody. They get the heck out of there.
Well, then that begs the question, because a lot of times people who are espousing the need for reform, as we have done on multiple occasions thus far on this podcast in its nascent stages, and sometimes we have lifted up the European model or some European models as worthy of emulation. And I'm wondering whether the idea that teachers are going to workshops or they're going to conferences or they're things of that nature, is that ultimately healthy for the teacher, or should they be making more of a break of it?
I would take it on the complete other side. I think that we should be doing what they're doing. The idea of having kids home all summer is quite a pain for parents. First of all, it creates challenges. But I think that their idea of really doing year round, they have like 6-week vacations or 4 or something interspersed a couple of times or 3 times, is more online, because this long summer, it's not as productive. At some point, it gets a little bit boring, at least in my experience. Whereas if you have 6 weeks, you're more likely to do things. So I think we're taking it a little bit far. It's not combat. They're in rooms with students talking.
I don't know. Sometimes it's felt like it. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, you've been that you don't say, okay, now I need 3 months R&R. I mean, you wouldn't have much of the military. The R&R is pretty short and sweet, right?
Yeah, just enough to get the cobwebs out and then get back in it. So
that's right. And as you think about the students as Charlie stooping in the bush, the longer they're and the softer.
The longer I sit here, the weaker I get, and Charlie gets stronger. Yes, I know.
But yeah, so I think about the end of that summer break. It's almost like it drags on at some point, and so I did find myself working, preparing, doing, writing curriculum. I wrote curriculum all year round. That's what I did, and so by the end, I was ready to get back. And then once I got back, I thought, what the hell? I don't want to be here. So it's a love-hate thing, but I had that throughout my career, wanting to, be a teacher in that school until I retire, or wanting to leave the next day. And it changed about every day. It's a little bit schizophrenic,
So perhaps the best summer is more of a mission. Yeah. It's some kind of combination of, the kind of the professional enrichment with serious vacations, honest vacations, a serious stepping away from the job. That is probably the best way to go about it.
Well, but remember that we're a little bit weird. And
just a little bit.
and our teacher colleagues listen to this are yelling at the screen or their phone,
slamming the dashboard.
Yeah, they want their 2.5 months, and shut up, Miller and Bourgeois. Don't mess.
What the hell are you doing?
So I think we'd have a lot of hate mail if we had a lot of listeners on this one.
If we had a means by which they could respond to us, they would do so.
Yeah.
But I think, because part of the issue, and we've talked about this before, part of the issue as far as how people view teachers and the seemingly lack of respect that some people hold teachers, part of it has to do with the lack of professionalism. Some people don't necessarily conduct themselves like professionals. Some people don't see their job professionally. Doing Zoom sessions with a martini just out of camera range, or whatever the case may be. Not to go back to the alcohol thing, but I mean, just
they're often.
Yeah, for someone that doesn't drink, it does tend to come up often. But the idea of that there should be a kind of a growing expectation of the teacher as a professional, and it would seem to suggest that part of that time should be spent during the summer, well, enriching yourself, making yourself more aware of your content, making yourself better prepared for the school year. So it's not just like you don't approach the school year like a goldfish. You just remembered everything that you now have to do in the course of the next 9 months. But the idea that, you should be coming into that building ready to rock and roll, ready to go. And perhaps that's part of the expectation, or that should be the expectation.
Well, I think in an ideal world, the teacher should go to school. I mean, that should be something that take a college course or two in your area. That's what we would like to see.
Yes.
And there's time to do it. I mean, it's really set up to align with an 8-week summer session, something like that. So that would be ideal. And, as a department head, you would probably be really happiest if your teachers, learned a little bit more about history, or just an idea, throw it out
couldn't
there.
hurt.
And English teachers should read some books, and talk about them. So again, that's where we're I guess that's the old school idea that we're not trying to extend the party. We're trying to get people back to work a little bit.
And I think also it's just that maybe not to approach it as an infringement, but rather as an opportunity. And you run into these folks who saw college as just simply something to get through. And you have what, like 15 degrees or something in college, various colleges around the country. And, I have a couple. It's measly in comparison, but still, I mean, but I like being in a classroom. I like learning stuff, and so, and I think that should be the kind of the natural state of mind of a teacher, and that should be something that they should want to do. Now, again, there's realities. I also have a daughter who, strangely enough, would not just sit idly by while her father, studied something, but at the same time, there has to be a way to try to find to make that work,
Well, as the summer winds down and you start to look ahead, it almost reminds me of the rhythms of baseball, doesn't it? As you get later into the summer, those dog days of summer, what do you call it? But is there something there about the rhythm of a school year, which we love? I mean, that's why we teach in a way, because there's a semblance of order in the way that year progresses.
And there is a semblance of order. There is a flow within the school year, and conversely, there's also a flow of the summer. Where the first few weeks are met with unbridled enthusiasm and just ready to go do something, and then you get into the second 3 weeks, and you start to get the sudden realization that your vacation is halfway over, and you need to start doing stuff in preparation for the school year. And then the last 3 weeks or so are spent sitting there bemoaning the fact that you're about to go back. But,
and that's when the pitchers and catchers return, metaphorically.
That's when the in-service happens, and, voluntary workouts and, voluntary, we're talking about practice. So, but, I don't know. So there's just a lot there. And I'm not quite sure what the right answer is. I mean, because there's a reality that teachers have to deal with, and because most teachers are not married to one another. God bless it. I mean, who would want to marry another teacher?
No, wait a minute. I actually did that actual thing, as did my wife.
I don't know. I don't know. Well, my wife was also teaching, although she was teaching in college at the time. So
You're getting off track, Mr.
I am
Miller.
getting off track. But I just think, I mean, it's just that, teachers have obligations over the summer, and that kind of sometimes it compromises what it is that maybe a teacher should do or can do over the course of the break.
Why don't we just stop being grumpy and just say we love summer, and it's perfect as it is.
I'm about to head to the mountains myself, so I'm ready. So
okay, because I mean, you seem happy. I've kind of got you back grumpy a little bit talking about what could be, but maybe this is one small thing we don't need to reform. It's just fine. It's kind of like morning coffee. It's just fine. You don't need to change it.
I think that's why. Okay, all right. Let's let that be the the characteristic statement of the show.
Wow,
things are fine.
So when I pick the music for this episode, it's going to be upbeat and joyful as we're talking our way out of it.
Something jaunty.
Jaunty?
Yes.
So far, I've never used that word. May not again.
I like the word jaunty. I think we need to bring it back. Okay. That and haberdasher.
Oh my goodness.
I want to bring back haberdasher.
There's a lot of things you want to bring back.
I told you about the time I was getting a suit from some guy at a well-known national chain of suits.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, has anyone ever called you a haberdasher? And he didn't know what the word meant.
He thought you were insulting him.
Well, he didn't know what I was doing. He just thought it was strange, weird, as it's already been established in this show that we're weird, And I remember looking at my wife, I said, we need to leave. This guy doesn't even know the history of his own profession. He doesn't know what a haberdasher is.
Oh my goodness.
We got to bring this stuff back.
There's a metaphor in there somewhere about full lives. Well, let's call it good here, Mel. I've enjoyed the conversation, particularly the haberdasher line. We'll stick with that.
Well, in that case, have a great weekend here, Dr. Bourgeois.
You as well, Herr Miller.